was actually in the Himalayas, trekking through the Himalayan mountains. And I just had this, I mean, it's a beautiful place. There's so much strong energy around and such a releasing place that opened me up to realize that if now was not the time, then when would it be? And that's where I went on a 10-year journey of, outside of physical health, understanding childhood psychology, early brain development, because I wanted to understand the wheels and cogs of what was making me make certain decisions that weren't healthy for my future and sabotaging my current lifestyle.
You are listening to The Dr. Haley Show, the podcast dedicated to helping you optimize your health. Each episode, there will be an interview or a message to help you discover better health. We will be featuring health radicals on the show to bring new ideas to the table, as well as doubling down on key fundamentals to support you living your best life. Your host is no other than the founder of Haley Nutrition, Dr. Michael Haley.
This is the Dr. Haley Show podcast. I'm Dr. Michael Haley, your show host, and today's guest is Troy Laing. He's an Australian entrepreneur and founder of Culture OC. Troy's vision was creating a biohacking social wellness club that promotes physical and mental well-being and merges fitness with social connectivity. Culture OC promotes regenerative health through technologies and mental health practices. Man, Troy, thank you for joining me on the show. And Australia is one of those coolest places. I love the people that I meet from there. I've never been there, but when did you come to the United States, and how many years did you spend in Australia?
Well, first off, Dr. Haley, thank you for having me on your podcast. I really appreciate the opportunity to be on here and to connect with your audience as well and share a bit of my story. I spent most of my life in Australia, so I only moved out to the US about 5 years ago. My wife is American, and that's why I moved out here. So I actually moved out at the very start of the pandemic, which was a challenging time for all of us, and especially in Australia, because our government went down into an extreme lockdown. So I actually had to apply for an exemption to leave the country just to get out. And then when I came here, at the time, me and my wife were only engaged, and I chose to stay here and apply for legal residency while I was here, because there was so much turmoil and no one really knew what was happening that I was worried if I went back, I wasn't sure when I was going to be able to see my wife or my future wife. So so the journey, there's a pretty crazy journey to our life and where we've evolved to right now. So
That is nuts. And I remember hearing a lot about that as far as the lockdowns over there and what was happening. And people getting arrested for being out in the streets. And, I'm in Florida. We're very, very different. Even within the United States, Florida is very different.
yeah.
And we had a few weeks that it was a little weird because no one was on the road except people like me. And we, when it came to business, I never shut my office. We went to work every day. When I got the bug, I spent maybe a few days home so that the other people working in the office didn't get it. And when they got it, they went and stayed home. But we didn't miss a single day of work and there were only 3 employees at the time, but we never closed our doors, not even a single day. So we didn't experience it even like the rest of the country. And then there's other countries that had much bigger lockdowns than we had in the United States.
Yeah,
I'm glad it's over.
It's pretty extreme because obviously California was vastly different to Florida in regards to what happened. And I'm glad there was people like yourself who understood that. Like, I was very actually outspoken in the early days because just my understanding and knowledge of my background in health and wellness and the people that I'm surrounded with, I felt like things weren't being handled correctly. It just seemed a bit of, over controlling in regards to what was happening. So if I actually stayed in Australia, it's highly likely I may have been locked up for my views on how I thought about what was happening.
Yeah, and that brings a smile to my face because I know exactly what you mean by that. And, not that we were rebelling, we were just expressing our opinions. And a lot of the things we expressed ended up proving to be true. We were right, even though it wasn't considered true and accurate information. It was called disinformation at the time, but now it's known that it was actually on point. And we actually had our masks in the office just in case someone ordered something online and showed up locally to pick it up. And we didn't want to, offend them. We're okay. If you want us to wear a mask, we'll wear it. But most people showed up and said, no, you don't have to put that on. We'd ask them
Yeah,
from a distance as they were approaching the door, do you want me to put a mask on? But
yeah,
some of them, oh, yeah, we had to. They were certain that if we didn't have a mask and they didn't have a mask, everyone was going to die.
yeah. And that's what it was about. Like you came from a point of view where you're respecting how someone feels and what they're most comfortable with. And that's how it should have been on many different variables all the way through to the mandated vaccines and things like that. It should have been what you're most comfortable with and each other sharing that community value of like, I want to do what I need to do to make you feel comfortable and vice versa. And there just wasn't that happening. We actually became so disconnected because of the way the narratives were and
Right.
how far they were pushing us to push against each other, which was really terrible.
Yeah, yeah. And I wasn't going to, take the shot to make you feel comfortable, but
Oh no, yeah, yeah. No, I didn't do that either.
So, it's interesting as I talk with you, and then we know a little bit about Culture OC and some of the services that you offer there. It's all making sense.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
brought you to the point of opening Culture OC?
So I've always had a really strong background in physical performance. So I joined a gym when I was 15 years old. I grew up in the 80s, so I was heavily influenced by people like you mentioned before, Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Jean-Claude Van Damme. So the aesthetic look of how you looked as a young guy, that's what drew me into the gym scene. But throughout, from for sort of 15 through to 30, I had many challenges with, I grew up in an environment with alcoholic parents. And through early stages, I got involved with alcohol and different drugs. And through my 20s, had challenges with some periods of addiction throughout my 20s. Not in the sense that I was strung out or not holding down a career or living a lifestyle, but emotionally and psychologically, I was living a life that was really creating a lot of anxiety and depression and mental health struggles. And at the age of 31, I decided that if I wasn't going to make a change in my life now, the life I was living was not going to have much of a future in regards to the future that I wanted. So I had this throughout that period of time, that 15 years or so, the foundation that I created with physical activity was my disconnect from the struggles of the world and addiction and substance abuse. But at 31, I was actually in the Himalayas, trekking through the Himalayan mountains. And I just had this, I mean, it's a beautiful place. There's so much strong energy around and such a releasing place that opened me up to realize that if now was not the time, then when would it be? And that's where I went on a 10-year journey of outside of physical health, understanding childhood psychology, early brain development, because I wanted to understand the wheels and cogs of what was making me make certain decisions that weren't healthy for my future and sabotaging my current lifestyle. And that led me into a path of different biohacking modalities, which actually started the first therapy I really got into. Besides, I'd been in steam rooms and saunas, and I'd been physically active. But the first therapy I got into was float therapy or sensory deprivation, the float pods. And I was working with a lady who became a close friend of mine that was helping me unpack some of my subconscious conditioning and my childhood trauma related to why I was making certain decisions and living a certain way. And through her therapy sessions and my float therapy sessions, I had this huge disconnect and release of different traumatic events and understanding who I was as an individual. And like in life, when you're looking for answers and you're looking to evolve, certain people and communities will start to come into your life. So from the float center where I would go to do float therapy regularly every week, they were connected to another community that would meet every morning, every day of the year as a free community and do cold water beach swims. And that community was right into breath work and meditation. And then that just kept evolving. And then I got deep into more technologies such as PEMF, LED or light therapy, red light therapy, hyperbaric oxygen chambers. And I just spent the next 10 years one, being fascinated with how you can optimize human performance and how you can really start to, biohack or shift your biology through different things such as technologies, supplements, things like peptides. And I just went on this deep dive and journey for my own personal health and wellness. And at one point, I'm like, some of these things are really hard to get access to. How can I bring this concept to our local communities and create awareness and education of the benefits of how you can use all these different therapies combined to biohack your body and get the best performance out of your body and have that psychological reset, the spiritual connection to breath work and meditation, and bring it all together in one spot.
Yeah, for anyone listening right now, go to cultureoc.com and have a look. The website's done really well, and you see, in fact, there's a video on that. Is it on the front page of the website, I think, where you actually walk around and show the various treatment options. And when I saw that, it's like, I want to go, and I'm in Florida, and it just seems like it'd be worth the drive to try all the different therapies, to head to California. And I'd be like a kid in a candy store. It looks amazing. You have everything that I want to try that I haven't yet, from the hyperbaric and the red light and the well, I have the PEMF at home, but I haven't done the float. There's so many things that I want to experience that are there.
Yeah, and the key too is, like, we do combined protocols. So different therapies synergistically boost the effects of the next one. So our super healing protocol is a combination of 4 therapies where we're starting with our PEMF and our brain tap device, moving on to our red light and then into our hyperbaric, because the way they synergistically work together, you get a much bigger response in regards to healing the body. So that's why we do different therapies and protocols around different structured technologies.
Now, was the swimming out in the cold ocean, was that what led you to do cold plunges?
It is. So every morning we would meet, whether it was in summertime, winter, and even though most people have this idea that Australia is just hot all year round, depending where you are in the country, during winter it does get really cold. I mean, some areas snow, but most areas it's not snow, but it does get cold. So those mornings were the most challenging, but the most rewarding. And on the weekends and different community events, we would bring big blow-up pools, fill them with ocean water, and dump them with ice. And that's where we started getting to the connection of breath work and cold plunging or ice baths. And Marcel Hoff, which is Wim Hof's brother, he would actually frequent the community and visit a lot and taught us a lot of the Wim Hof or the Hof style breath work around cold water therapy and emotional fight or flight control. And I realized early on, it was just the experience of breath work and cold water therapy completely changed my life. And I'm a very avid practitioner in cold plunge practices. We actually teach a whole guided breath work and cold plunge practice so that people really can get the benefits out of cold plunging as a therapy and as a mental health practice that I believe are the most valuable assets of cold water therapy and breath work. You have the physiological benefits, which are amazing, like inflammation reduction. You get the release of that cold shock protein. But for me, it's the psychological benefits of, one, inherently doing something you don't want to do, which rewires your brain and helps you manage stress and discomfort in the real world when you're faced with challenges. And just, it really becomes a deep meditative state. When you're cold plunging regularly, that first 10 to 15 seconds when you're a regular cold plunger is the hardest, that adjustment period. But then you kind of go into a deep meditation. You're not thinking about anything else. You're just in a really sweet spot where you just disconnect from all the challenges that you may be facing in life. So I think cold water therapy and breath work, for me, from a mental health point of view, is one of the best practices you can learn with someone teaching it the right way. And one of the best things you can do on a regular basis, if, of course, you're not already in some compromised health situation where your body's depleted. But if you're a healthy individual and really looking for a stronger mindset, I think cold plunging and breath work is one of the amazing things you can do for anxiety and depression and things like that.
You enjoying the show thus far? One of the many health secrets that we have covered on the show is all around aloe vera, specifically drinking raw aloe vera. Our aloe vera has helped our customers effectively heal their gut, increase their intestine health, lower inflammation in the body, eliminate and/or decrease acid reflux, have glowing skin and hair, and so much more. Now, as a frequent member of our audience, you will be exposed to exclusive specials and coupon codes for the awesome products manufactured by Haley Nutrition. That's right, for simply being awesome and tuning in, you can get a mini discount to help you optimize and better your health. To see how we can help and support you on your health journey, tune into the episodes and listen for coupon codes that you can use at www.haleynutrition.com before you make your orders of raw aloe vera. Once again, it's www.haleynutrition.com. Now, back to the show.
I mentioned PEMF that, I have at the home, but I also have a form of the ice plunge. It's the poor man's ice plunge. It's the chest freezer that was sealed.
That's how I started.
Yeah, and filled with water and then hooked up to a thermal temperature controller to control the temperature of it. And we wanted to make sure we were going to use it before purchasing a cold plunge. I've never considered putting it together with the breath work. And breath work is something that I've never really gone too deep into beyond when I line up for my tee shot. I might take a deep breath, hold it for a second, and then let it out to get out of that, tight fear mode, to be able to relax before swinging at the golf ball.
Yeah.
That would be the extent of my breath work. But when you get in the cold plunge, the first thing is like, it affects your breath. And it's kind of, my breath has always just done its own thing at that point, getting into the water. And I never really thought, there's probably some really cool breath work that could be done with this. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
Well, what you shared there about taking a deep breath before you tee off, what you're doing there is you're slowing your heart rate and putting yourself in the zone. And bringing that back to the cold plunge is most people hyperventilate, so they breathe really quickly, or they hold their breath. And when we're talking about fight or flight response, our emotional response to an environment, both those responses increase your heart rate. And when you go into a cold plunge, because you're in an environment that can be unsafe or seen as unsafe by your fight or flight response, your body will naturally release chemicals that will want to make you get out. So for a lot of people, they feel like they're in pain and discomfort, but it's a psychological response to your emotional fight or flight response. So that's why really nice, slow, controlled, deep breaths when you're in an environment like that brings your heart rate down. And then that's what gives you control over the environment, which is why we teach that as an aspect of cold plunging.
Okay. And the one thing I've definitely experienced with the cold plunge is what you mentioned about, you choose to do something that you really don't want to do, and it gives you power, mental power in other areas of your life. It's like fasting and saying no to food.
Yeah.
If you can say no to food for a period of time and, control your desires, so to speak, it gives you power and control in other areas of your life. So I do like what you said about that. As far as reducing inflammation, it would make sense probably on acute damage that had been done from maybe a heavy workout right before or something like that. I don't know what the other benefits are to cold plunge.
Well, actually, I mean, there's a lot of science and research now. So we generally knew cold plunging as a activity to utilize after a heavy workout or training for inflammation per se. But I've worked with a lot of men actually specifically with low testosterone levels. And there's a lot of research and clinical studies now showing that if you can cold plunge, say, 30 minutes or so before your actual weightlifting or heavy weightlifting training, we're seeing up to a 50% increase in natural testosterone production.
Wow.
So there are, and even now we're understanding more that if you're weight training, it's actually like, besides if you did an ultra marathon or a marathon, doing a cold plunge afterwards would be great for acute inflammation, to reduce inflammation in the body. But when it comes to our weight training and muscle stimulation and muscle growth, it's actually counterintuitive to cold plunge after a session because it actually slows your muscle growth down. But to get more stamina and performance, especially from the weightlifting point of view or resistance training, it's actually more beneficial to cold plunge prior to your workouts to get more performance and stamina out of your workout, and to actually naturally increase natural testosterone production.
Interesting. My logic was backwards.
Well, before cold plunging became more of a mainstream thing, that's all we knew. We saw the athletes get off the football field and jump in the cold plunge, and it does have value for, more of an extreme workout where you want to reduce inflammation. But when we're talking more for muscle stimulation and muscle growth, it is actually counterintuitive.
Yeah, we want to maximize hormones. I shouldn't say maximize, optimize. We want to
Yeah,
optimize hormone levels. And that would make sense if it's having that kind of effect. Now, what about the hyperbaric oxygen? Where does that come into play?
So, I mean, with our demographic, we work with everyone from like people going through chronic health issues. I'm actually helping a few clients that are going through cancer treatments and chemotherapy. And then we have the longevity aspect of just better quality health through hyperbaric. But the science of what's happening in a hyperbaric oxygen chamber is we're in a pressurized vessel. So it's measured in ATA, atmosphere absolutes, which is basically the same as going below sea level. So for anyone who's dived down deeper into the water and you get that pressure, that's what we're simulating in a hyperbaric oxygen chamber by pressurizing a vessel that you're inside of. Where in our chamber, it's not pressurized with oxygen, it's pressurized with air. So we have a medical grade oxygen concentrator. So you're wearing a mask that's delivering anywhere from 95 to 100% oxygen. So at pressure, the laws of gases to liquid is when you get to a certain pressure, there's a crossover where gas becomes saturated and able to absorb into liquid. Now, the beauty of that is our blood is made up of blood plasma, which is the liquid portion of our blood. And that that's more of a transportation vehicle. It's moving nutrients around our body. When you're in a hyperbaric oxygen chamber, that blood plasma that doesn't normally have a high level of oxygen concentration is saturated with oxygen from what you're breathing in. And under pressure, that blood plasma is forced into the tissue. So generally with any sort of inflammation in the body or trauma from surgery or chronic health issues, where parts of our body is getting a lack of microcirculation, so good blood flow, and that area is then hypoxic, which means that it doesn't have a lot of oxygen to the tissue. So from a cellular point of view, to produce more ATP or cellular energy, what our cells need is oxygen. That's a fuel source to produce more ATP. And then more oxygen to an area that's hypoxic is going to help regenerate the tissue faster. So that's why recovery from surgery, you're going to speed up, or injury, you're going to speed up recovery time much faster. We work a lot with people who've had TBIs or concussion or brain injuries. And the same thing, we're forcing high levels of oxygen into the tissue. Now, if you had a serious injury and you're using hyperbaric regularly, like we're using it, say 5 days a week, 5 days on, 2 days off, if you have damage to an area that lacks blood flow or circulation, your body actually starts to create new vascular pathways to actually feed blood flow and oxygen to the area when you're in a hyperbaric oxygen chamber. And outside of that, when you're using it regularly, you're producing or starting to increase the amount of stem cells mobilized from your bone marrow. And obviously stem cells are quite big these days. We have clinics where you can actually get stem cell injections and stem cell therapy, but your stem cells are naturally produced from your bone marrow. So in a hyperbaric, you're actually increasing the amount of stem cells that are mobilized, which is great for healing and recovery as well. But from a anti-aging point of view, getting more oxygen to the tissue gets better skin quality. There was a study out of Israel where they had an age group of 55 to 65-year-olds doing hyperbaric 5 days on, 2 days off over 90 days. I think it was 60 treatments in total. And that study showed there was a 20% lengthening in their telomere length, which was reversing the effects of aging on a cellular level.
The telomere, that has to do with how many stem cells there are, correct?
Telomere length is the end of the cap that covers a cell. So my intention and goal is to live to about 120 years old, which is basically the timeline of telomere length. So as your telomeres shorten, you're dying off on a cellular level. So if you can extend the length of a telomere, you're extending the length of the cell cycle and the life cycle of how your body is regenerating. Because a year from now, we're a completely different person cellularly because we're continuously replicating cells. So if you can extend the telomere length of that cell life, you're extending the length of your physical life.
Okay, very interesting. You're reminding me of something that I heard in another podcast with Dr. Lewis, John Lewis, and he had researched aloe vera. I happen to be in the aloe vera business, which is why I went to see him when he was doing his research at the University of Miami. I wanted to see what he found out about the benefits of aloe vera. And they had found, similar to the hyperbaric oxygen chamber, that it was somehow causing your body to release and use more stem cells,
Yep.
to the point where they were reversing dementia. So, and nerve tissue regenerates very, very slowly. And if you can get that process working faster and you're actually doing more repair faster than the damage is being done, why couldn't you actually reverse the neurological condition? So I'm guessing hyperbaric chambers might also be used to improve brain function when it comes to things like, dementia, Alzheimer's. Yes.
Yeah, the science indicates that here in the States there is only 15 FDA approved on-label uses for hyperbaric, but if you go to Europe and South America and other parts of the world, they use it for a huge array of different things. Hyperbaric medicine really should be something that people have a lot more understanding of. It should be also something that should be resorted to prior to other interventions, especially pharmaceutical interventions, because we're naturally triggering the body to get its natural healing response. And one of the most important things is oxygen under pressure, which is what hyperbaric is. But unfortunately, and I definitely know that you would agree with this, we live in a country where things are not really structured towards getting to the root cause and wanting to fix the problem. We're more, well, not me or you, but the establishment is more interested in just giving out the magic pill that they've made to fix people that at the end of the day doesn't work and normally makes them more sick.
Yeah. How was that in Australia when it came to that?
We don't. Australia is there's definitely not as much of a hyper focus on pharmaceutical intervention. There's definitely a lot more practical, holistic approaches to. I mean, as a young boy, like my doctor never gave me an antibiotic. I never had an antibiotic until I was in my late teens.
That's about when I stopped having antibiotics. When I started realizing, what is this? It's funny. But yeah. So I don't think that people are intentionally pushing drugs and canceling natural treatments. I think they're doing it for good reasons. I don't think they're intentionally doing it to be evil. I think the system was designed, and people actually designed it here to think we're doing something good, because there are a lot of, snake oils out there. There's people pushing natural remedies that don't work, but a lot of them do. And, they probably lobbied and said, oh, look what they're pushing here to treat cancer, and these people are dying. And now, because of that, a lot of the real things that are beneficial are squashed. But yeah, there's the pharmacy out there, the pharmaceuticals, they're big money. And when we start showing natural ways to do the same thing, there's profit loss. And that might make someone say, well, we could probably shut that down, and we should, because it's not proven. It's a very messed up system that we have here. But I do think we're going to see some improvement in the next few years.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're definitely correct. I don't feel like doctors are out there trying to be evil and hurt people. I think they're institutionalized into a program that's been made for them to feel like they're doing the right thing. I do think there's an evil side of pharmaceutical industries, because they're testing their products, and a lot of studies have shown in different things that they've been looked into is that their products have been shown to be harmful, and yet they've fudged the test results or manipulated them. And we have had extreme cases here in the US where we've had a lot of people die because of situations like that. And there are a lot of whistleblowers. There's a ball, I can't remember, Ways to Well, I think his name is. He used to be in the industry, and he's been on Joe Rogan a few times, and he's Ferris Bueller, I think. Is that his name? Anyway, but he talks openly and all about the corruption in pharmaceutical industries and that push to make that profit. And it is so corrupt. It's
Yeah. Yeah, and there have been drugs that have been recalled after being proven to be effective. Proven, quote, air quotes.
Yeah.
Okay. Red light therapy. How did that enter into culture OC?
So most people know it as red light therapy, but it's actually technically classed as LED stimulation, because the difference between receiving a therapy and being stimulated by something is what is practically happening. So actually, my best friend is the owner and founder of LightStim, the only FDA approved LED devices actually on the market in the States. And when we talk about the FDA, when we talk about food and drugs, I wouldn't say they do the best job, but when it comes to devices, they're extremely hard to get FDA approval for devices in general. So Steve and Joni, who own LightStim, they came across LED devices over 20 years ago. So they've been around for a long time. For what I work, because I have an LED LightStim bed, I use all their panels, and you notice a significant difference. But talking about the science of red light or light therapy, specifically with our red light bed, we have two different wavelengths of red light and two different wavelengths of infrared light. Very important, red light is only a small portion of the healing benefits of light therapy. Infrared light is very important with devices because that's what's increasing blood flow and circulation by increasing the tissue temperature. Our cells were made up of trillions of cells, like we've spoken about earlier in this podcast, and our cells absorb red light and they convert that into ATP. So it's a biological process of stimulation through the cells. Now, infrared, red light, these are all technically rays of light that we would naturally get from the early morning and late afternoon sun. We are just not exposed to the sun enough at the right times of the day. So that's why LED light therapy with these light wavelengths that we're receiving is basically stimulating a biological process within the body that we would naturally get in nature as we were in our primal days and exposed to the sunlight when we were meant to. And now we're mechanically forcing this reaction through technology and through something like our LightStim LED bed.
Yeah, I think that's neat because you can get all of the red light therapy without getting sunburned.
Yeah, without the UV, because there's no UV rays.
And our bodies aren't used to the sun because we haven't been out enough. Thank you for tuning in to the Dr. Haley Show podcast. Because you made it this far, I have a special coupon code that you can use throughout the month of July 2025. Get $10 off your purchase of $100 or more at HaleyNutrition.com. The coupon code is July 2025. That's JULY 2025. And as usual, you can even use this coupon with on sale and already discounted bundled items. Enjoy the rest of the podcast. Now, is the salt therapy, there's that word therapy again, is salt therapy, is that part of the salt float or is that a separate?
So, well, we originally had, and we've discontinued it because it didn't really work too well, but we had we have two infrared saunas. We had one with a red light therapy panel in it, as well as the infrared technology for sauna. And then our other sauna, we had it was called a halotherapy machine that would release a salt mist into the sauna and create like a salt cave, which is really great for respiratory problems. So if you have asthma or cold and flu, being in a salt room in general, because there are facilities that are just, that's what they are, they're salt rooms, because it opens up your respiratory system. So it's really great for people who have respiratory illnesses or problems. But our float pod is a pod that is filled with magnesium and high levels of Epsom salt and magnesium. And in that pod, its technical name is a sensory deprivation tank, which in these pods, you're getting into the water. The water's only sort of, just below, ankle sort of deep. It's not incredibly deep. But because of the specific gravity of the salt and magnesium, when you get in and lie down, you actually float suspended around the pod. Because it's sensory deprivation, it's a pod that closes, you turn the lights off. We generally play like some meditation type music just to take people out of the monkey mind and the overthinking. And then it has been referred to as being back in the womb, because you're in this pod, this filled with body temperature water, you're floating around, there's no light, no sensory disconnection, and you have it's been really great for mental health and stress and anxiety. But from a physical point of view, because of the high levels of salt, our skin is like a big sponge. So we're absorbing our environment, which is good and bad, because we're exposed to a lot of environmental toxins and chemicals, air pollution, our bathing water. But when you're in the pod, your body is absorbing this salt and magnesium. So it's actually a really great way to hydrate the skin and rejuvenate the skin, to hydrate the body. But from a relaxation point of view, it's one of the only environments where your body goes into a physical and mental deep relaxation, because you're just being suspended through this. It's if anyone's been to the Dead Sea, it's the same experience where you can't sink because there's so much salt in the water that the specific gravity will just hold you up, so you can't sink.
Yeah, that's one of the therapies I haven't experienced yet, and I want to. Orange County, right? Orange County,
Yeah,
California.
yeah, that's right.
I have to come out there. And
Yeah,
there's other centers that are doing some of these, but I haven't seen one like yours that literally has everything.
yeah, that was the key feature, is that we wanted to, like, there are places that do, there's a float centers and there's sauna places, but we wanted to bring it all into one space, so you had these options of all these different modalities.
Yeah, yeah. Now, are you using the PEMF yourself as well?
Yeah, I try to most days do. I don't know if you've heard of a device, Dr. Patrick Porter. He's the developer of a device called the Brain Tap, which is an audio headset that uses light and audio therapy. So there's a visor that comes down over the eyes with the eyes closed, and there is a pulsating light therapy that you visually see with your eyes closed. The earpieces have LEDs in them that activate energy meridians in the ear. And then the meditations are geared towards anything that you can think of, from stress relief to sleep to creativity to success. So I try to most mornings do that headset on the PMF mat. That's one of the things I like to do to start my day, just to put me in that right mental state.
The Brain Tap and PEMF. So that's two things at once.
Yeah.
All
Combined.
right. Multitasking. And we have the
Yeah.
PEMF mat, which I sometimes use. My wife uses it almost every day. And, I do notice that when I go on it, and there's different settings, there's like a relaxed setting. I think there's an energy setting or something like that. I want to relax. And 10 minutes into it, I just feel like, wow, I actually feel a difference.
Yeah.
I couldn't have accomplished that just, laying on this. We have ours on a recliner.
Yeah.
And if I just got in that recliner, it wouldn't have felt the same. So
Yeah. Yeah.
something's happening. I don't know what it is. Something's happening.
Well, one thing that's happening with PMF, there's three sort of factors that with all therapies are playing some role. We're increasing blood flow and circulation, especially microcirculation. So you're getting more, blood flow throughout the body, which automatically reduces inflammation, because that's how we're feeding oxygen and nutrients to our body. It is very anti-inflammatory through the process of increasing microcirculation, and it's also helping separate cell, like when we have senescent cells or old cells that are not being flushed from the body, they can bind together and cause inflammation. So I often refer to PMF as because a low intensity PMF machine is almost massaging your cells to pull them apart so they're not binding together, to get better cellular response and communication, and increasing ATP, or cellular energy production. So that's why you get that lethargic. I mean, I would love for you, if you think that's relaxing, being on the PMF, this Brain Tap device puts you in a whole other state where some people that are on it, they're out cold because they go into a deep meditative state.
What can someone do that has sensitivity to flashing lights?
That may have a negative effect. Obviously, we're profiling people, and when we do our intake form, seeing what people are comfortable with. So maybe if you have something like epilepsy where that can be triggered by light flickering, we wouldn't advise you doing that. Same with PMF. If you have any form of pacemaker or things like that, we obviously you don't want to be using a PMF device because it can throw your heart rhythm out. So obviously, we're always profiling our clients and making sure we understand their health background and where they're at.
Yeah. In a given day, when someone comes to your center, how many of the various treatments do they get?
So it depends what they're doing. We have a lot of people that will just come into cold plunge daily. We have people that will come in regularly to do the contrast, cold plunge, and sauna. If it's more an intense healing process, like I'm working with a couple of cancer patients where they're in anywhere from 3 to 5 days a week doing my super healing protocol, which is starting on the PMF mat with the brain tap, going onto the red light bed, and then finishing in the hyperbaric chamber, where they're doing that as a single protocol every time they come in, anywhere from 3 to 5 times a week. We have an anti-aging or anti-inflammatory protocol, which is our PMF, brain tap, a red light bed. Then we do guided breath work and cold plunge, and then finish in the sauna, which is another one of our protocols. So generally anywhere from a single treatment to 3 to 4 therapies in one session.
Okay. And obviously, you don't have to have symptoms or problems to benefit from these. How many of these are you using in a given week?
I will do. I'm a regular cold plunger, so I'm pretty much in the cold plunge most mornings. PMF and brain tap, like I mentioned, is my way to really reset and start my day right on mentally. So normally I do that first, cold plunge. We have 4 kids and 2 businesses, so I try to find the most time available. Hyperbaric, I try to make sure I'm in there once a week just for good health and longevity. Sauna, I don't get in there enough, but ideally at least 3 to 4 times a week is what I aim for. Just the studies and science behind saunaing that amount throughout the week is incredible for reducing all-cause mortality such as cardiovascular disease, heart disease, because you're continuously detoxing the body of environmental toxins. The red light bed, I don't get that on that as much, but most of my clients are on there 3 or 4 times a week, and you significantly notice the benefits. The only reason I'm not is just because of my lifestyle and trying to keep up with running a business and working on my other business, and I have a 3-year-old and kids that range from 23 to 3. So, and trying to physically train and keep, in the ideal world in the future, when I have more of a foundation of more employees and more time available, most of these things I would basically, besides the hyperbaric, I wouldn't do that daily. I don't feel there's a benefit from a longevity point to do that daily unless you're managing some sort of serious health issue. But nearly everything else on a daily basis, like from red light to sauna to cold plunge to PMF, I think if you can get onto those devices at least 3 to 5 times a week, you're going to see significant change in your longevity, your performance, your stamina. That I know just from what I do, what I've done in the past, and why I help people now.
Yeah. I love what I do for work. I get to show up at the office, have discussions like this with people like you. I get to talk to customers that have benefited from, the products they purchase from us. And all day long, people are thanking us and praising us for the things that we do. I would imagine you kind of like going to work too.
I do. And our facility is more of a spa type vibe. So we've created this beautiful, natural toned and earthy feeling natural plants. So what I love is people walk in our door, and before they've even done a treatment, they instantly share how relaxed they already feel, just by the energy and the vibe. And I love community. The culture was always meant to be more about building community and bringing people together. So I never want to just have a facility where you're walking in and out. Like, all our staff are really friendly, like when I say friendly, not just by nature friendly, like a lot of our members that come in regularly are friends of our staff and vice versa, because there's so much connection, and we do community events, we do big breathwork events and pop-up ice bath events. So for me, when you have a brick and mortar, I just think community is such an important aspect of a business, because it's more than just someone being a number. They feel like they're a part of something special and a part of almost a progressive change as well, because like you touched on earlier, I think the next several years we're looking at a better society in regards to understanding their health and wellness and having control over their ability to control their health. And biohacking and what we're doing now is starting to become somewhat of a more sought after environment, to understand that gives you these deeper healing benefits in regards to a better quality of life. So,
I'm wondering if you had considered building this, what your vision is in the future, to develop the community, for instance. Have you ever thought, oh, what if we put a gym here or a coffee kava bar or something like that?
yeah, originally, I mean, the suite we have now just came up as a last, like with culture. My actual big dream was to have a huge super center with a gym and what you just explained, a recovery center and a nice healthy meal center. But we got given this opportunity in a building that friends of ours were buying and moving in their business into. And the suite it's 2,400 square feet. And I said to my wife, why don't we try the wellness center? It's a big enough space to really bring it to life. And she was like, okay, let's do it. So we literally signed the lease. I have a trade background. I'm a tradesman back in Australia. So we did all the renovations ourselves, full design renovation, which took us about 3 months. And then we launched in June 2 years ago. So,
Well, I like what you're doing, and I'm sure it's going to grow and big things going to happen. So, Troy, thank you so much for sharing with me. For anyone listening in the Orange County area, Orange County, California, check out Culture OC. If anyone's heading there, going to vacation, check out Culture OC. It sounds like a great place. I want to come visit sometime. Going to have to make it happen.
yeah, well, I mean, whenever you're out here, I'd love for you to come visit. I'll look after you and put you through some of our protocols. And you can have a whole spa day where you can spend the whole day just doing all different treatments. I think you'd love it.
Yeah, I already checked the map, and because I have a son that's out in the Gulf of California out there, but he's closer to the tip of Mexico, and I checked the distance; it's about 1,000 miles away.
So I mean, yeah. So he's on the border of California and Mexico.
Well, yeah, and I guess on the Gulf of California, there on the west side of the Gulf, down on the
Yep.
tip, that's Mexico,
Yeah, yeah.
and that's where he is.
Oh, right. Because I was thinking if it's only down towards San Diego, that's only
Yeah.
like an hour or so away. But yeah.
Yeah, he's living on a boat, I guess, as a helper to the captain on a 110-foot yacht. Rough life at 20 years old,
Yeah. Yeah.
but good stuff. Troy, I enjoyed it. Any final words, things that I should have asked you, and where can people go to find out more?
I just want to really, I appreciate these opportunities to share a bit about not what I'm doing, but what is involved in what we're doing from an industry aspect, because I just feel like there are other alternatives for people rather than having to go down the route of surgeries or pharmaceutical intervention, and being able to explore different avenues. I love, working with doctors like yourself, holistic doctors who are more open-minded and looking for alternatives to find root causes and start the healing process there. So I really want to applaud people like yourself, one, doing the work you do. I know you work a lot in the field of aloe vera and being more progressive with other ways of treatments, and then providing a platform to connect with other people like myself to share these messages. So I just really want to thank you for giving me this opportunity. Like you mentioned, you can find us at cultureoc.com. All our handles are, if you look at Culture OC on YouTube, Culture OC _ Instagram. I mean, our platforms are all geared towards education and what we do in the facility. So, and a lot of them you'll see me speaking on. So if you've watched this, you'll definitely see my face pop up on socials and different places like that.
I'm impressed. I learned a lot today. I'm going to subscribe to your channels, the ones that I participate. I won't be subscribing on TikTok because they canceled my account, but there's YouTube and Instagram. TikTok canceled me. I don't even know why.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but I guess I speak out on some things here and there. YouTube hasn't canceled me. They've threatened a couple times. They've taken down some of my podcasts, but they haven't canceled me yet.
Yeah. You're a rebel. I love it.
Good stuff. Troy, thanks so much.
All right. Thanks, mate. You have a lovely day. Thanks for having me on.
I hope you enjoyed that episode today on The Dr. Haley Show. Make sure to hit subscribe on whichever platform you are listening to this. If this episode made you think of someone, go ahead, take a screenshot, and share this exact episode with them. You can catch the show notes for this episode on www.drhaley.com. If you want to geek out with Dr. Michael Haley on other radical health topics, be sure to check out his YouTube channel, where he posts exclusive video content. All the details are at www.drhaley.com, and we can't wait to hang out with you on the next episode.